All right, so we're taking a look in your iCivics packet at pages, let's see, I think it's 99 and 100. So we're going to read together after we preview about our first president, President Washington. So our title is Nation Builder in Chief. Subtitles, we got warning, the new nation could self-destruct, exclamation point. Makes me a little nervous. So I think about what challenges we were facing as a new nation. And then I see the image over here looks like the original flag with the 13 stars, and it's being held up by stable finances. So that means your money being secure, a strong defense, so our military keeping us safe, and peaceful politics. So instead of arguing and fighting between our political parties, trying to make peace. I see a picture of George Washington. He's the president of the not so United States. So I'm thinking about the original 13 states and how they struggle to work together. They often thought of themselves as 13 almost little countries. They liked their independence. So goal of a debt-free America. I'm finding my prior knowledge and thinking about Alexander Hamilton, and he was in charge of the Department of the Treasury with President Washington. He was in Washington's cabinet, and he had a plan to get us started off on the right foot. I see the picture of General Washington from the Revolutionary War. Even in the 1700s, war was expensive. What do you see that cost money? Right, so I see soldiers, I see weapons. They had to be paid a salary. They're wearing uniforms. All that costs money. It's a federal thing, so the national level of government up top. This looks like Department of Treasury, original seal from 1778. And I notice Alexander Hamilton's name in here. Now wait just a minute. So remember, we have just finished fighting against the British to become our own country. One thing that we were very unhappy about was being taxed, but we have a new problem, right? So there is war debt owed, millions of dollars of debt from fighting the Revolutionary War to get rid of taxes from the British. But now we have to pay our own debt, so we're going to need to tax. Defense, do we need that? So defense, like military, why was there a question about that? Interesting. I see a flag, the 3rd New York Regimental flag during the war. It's the Revolutionary War, I assume. Each state provided its own soldiers. Interesting. Okay, maybe an army would be good. Army soldiers carried musket like this. Okay, so those are slow to shoot. Maybe a navy too. So we're looking to get things that cost more money, right? So we're a country in debt, and we're looking at making a national army and navy. This is the USS Chesapeake, so this is part of our Navy. One of America's first 6 frigates, so it's a type of a ship, a big one apparently, that was used to fight in the seas. Threats on the inside the United States, makes me question that. And I see John Adams' face. So is he a threat on the inside? Not sure. And then not pretty, but it works. Banner from Jefferson's inauguration. So interesting. So I know John Adams was our 2nd president, and Thomas Jefferson is our 3rd. So I'm wondering what happens here. All right, so let's go through and read now. Warning, new nation could self-destruct. What are the chances that 13 fiercely independent states could band together strongly enough to become the most powerful nation in the world in less than 200 years? A strong nation needs stable finances, so that's money, effective self-defense so that we can stay safe, and a peaceful political system. But when the first president of the United States took office, America had major money problems, no effective military, and a brand new political system nobody had ever tried before. So those three things a strong nation needed, not so much for the United States to start off. And that reminds me to look over here at these three pillars, okay, to being a strong country. As if that weren't enough, many Americans actually feared the United States becoming a strong nation. They just won their freedom from an abusive government and didn't want to go through that again. So another barrier to becoming a strong new country is that our history, we didn't like having a strong country, right? The British were abusive in their power. President of the not so United States, when George Washington became America's first president in 1789, he faced a difficult challenge. He led a government lots of people didn't want. The US Constitution created a central government, but many Americans, so remember Federalists, Anti-Federalists, ratify me. Many Americans, Anti-Federalists, thought individual states should have most of the power. So the Constitution, favored by the Federalists, has a strong central government. But other Americans, like half of Americans, thought individual states should have most of the power. So that's a big split. They were afraid to let the new government actually use the powers the Constitution gave it. Tensions ran high between those who thought America needed a strong federal government to solve its problems and those who wanted state-based solutions. So our goal is to have a debt-free America. When Washington took office, solving the nation's money problems was the number one priority. The United States had borrowed lots of money to pay for the war against Great Britain. Right? So we were in debt. We borrowed money. Afterward, the nation's finances got so bad that America actually stopped paying back the money it owed to other countries. This made America look irresponsible and hurt its chances of getting loans in the future. Most states had taken out loans too, and they also owed money. The nation's debt was a big, disorganized mess that dragged down everyone's ability to be successful. Okay, so just like if you, when you're old enough, get credit and you take out a loan to buy a car or a house or to go to college, if you don't start paying on those loans, nobody loans you money anymore, okay? And they're going to start taking it from you. Not a good start. It's a federal thing. President Washington put Alexander Hamilton in charge of the Department of Treasury. Hamilton believed that America couldn't be successful without a strong central government. So if you remember that difference between Jefferson and Hamilton. Hamilton is a Federalist, wants a strong central government. Under Washington's leadership, Hamilton arranged for the U.S. to take responsibility for all the states' individual loans. Ho-hum, right? Wrong. This was a smart move that let America speak as one nation when talking money with foreign countries. Not only that, if the federal government was responsible for paying back all the loans, then it had a good reason to use its new power to collect taxes. So now maybe the states will be on board with paying taxes, relax a little bit because they're paying for their own debt. Okay? Their debt is getting paid off with that tax money. Imposing taxes was another constitutional power many people didn't want the government to actually use. But times were desperate. Washington convinced Congress to pass a law taxing certain kinds of liquor made in America. It was the first time the U.S. government taxed Americans in addition to foreign products, and it caused an outrage. By the time the third president took office and asked Congress to repeal or take back the tax, money from this tax had stabilized America's finances. Defense. Do we need that? After the Revolutionary War ended, those in the U.S. government felt there was no need to keep a military standing around. Many states feared that keeping a military during peacetime would be really expensive and really scary. Okay, what do you need a military for if you're not at war? What if the federal government used the military against the states? In the early years, many Americans opposed any kind of permanent U.S. military. Okay, maybe an army would be good. At first, the U.S. kept a tiny army and mainly relied on volunteers from each state to be prepared to fight if necessary. But these militiamen were not trained soldiers. Americans were quickly settling the new territory and facing resistance from the Native Americans who lived there. As conflicts grew, the untrained militia failed at furthering U.S. goals on the frontier. Right? So we need a real army because an untrained militia isn't going to get the job done in the West, fighting against Native Americans. Washington's Secretary of War got Congress to approve a plan to reorganize and train the Army. The plan worked, but as soon as it wasn't needed anymore, Congress went back to the old way. Americans still feared a permanent military, but the Army would never again be as small as it was when Washington took office. Maybe a Navy too. Security on the frontier wasn't the only problem America faced in the early years. While Washington was president, Barbary pirates off the coast of North Africa were attacking American ships. Okay, so we have fighting against Native Americans in the West and fighting at sea off the coast of North Africa. The American naval force had been disbanded after the Revolutionary War, but now Washington convinced Congress to authorize a new force of 6 ships. When John Adams took office as America's second president, France was upset because of an agreement America had made with Britain. To retaliate, France was attacking American ships too. Under President Adams, Congress created the Navy Department. It was President Jefferson who finally used the Navy to fight the Barbary pirates. So again, we got some problems with France and Britain. They both want us to trade kind of exclusively with them, and it doesn't end so well. Threats on the inside. The early Americans had their roots in Great Britain, which had always been ruled by a king or a queen. Throughout history, a change of power from one ruler to the next often brought violence, such as plots to overthrow or even murder the new leader. Americans didn't want that. It helped that the United States had a system for electing leaders, not choosing them based on a family line. Even so, it was an important step when President Washington stepped down after 2 terms in office and America peacefully elected John Adams to be the next president. Not pretty, but it works. Everything changed when Adams ran for president again. He and Thomas Jefferson represented 2 political parties with very different views about the balance of power. So this is that Federalist, anti-Federalist situation again. And the federal government. Who should be more powerful, the states or the federal government? The presidential campaign was nasty, with each side launching personal attacks and accusations. Despite all this drama, once Thomas Jefferson won the election and Adams lost, everything calmed down, proving that America could transfer power peacefully, even with deep disagreements among citizens.